Hello and welcome to another episode of the Admiralty podcast. I'm your host for today, that is Azur Gangsta, and as usual, I am joined by my co-host, Animarchy, the guy who ate Pearl Harbor, and Duolingo 78, who does not appreciate good submarines like U-96, don't you?
Piss off, dude. Just piss off.
And
yeah, just like forget our guest.
yeah, right. And just let me move on to the guest, okay? And today we have our very first guest to the podcast. First official guest. First official, inverted commas, Azur Lane podcast. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Am I allowed to talk now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Alrighty. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate this. I didn't know this was the official first one, so now I got a lot of pressure on me.
It is the first one. Yeah.
But yeah,
Knights?
I'm sorry. What about Arc Knights?
we've got a thing with the rival Arc Knights podcast because
Arc
them.
Knights,
We're
yeah.
better.
We don't compliment the Arc Knights ones. We only trash talk them.
Well, I've never played Arc Knights, so that works.
Great.
Absolutely, best thing.
Anyway, this is the most scuffed introduction ever, but hopefully you guys if you guys have been around YouTube anytime in the last 2 years, you've maybe stumbled in along one of my videos. I do, different math videos, data mine videos, recap videos. I started off doing PvP. We do those still every once in a while, and the PR5 review is coming, I swear.
Oh. Well, how long has it been in works?
Like a month, I think, since it came out.
I mean, it makes sense because in a month you can't really full on dev 30 all of the PR goals, so it makes sense why it takes a long time.
Yeah, I just think it's funny that I have the PR4 Fate 5 video out before I have the PR5 video out.
Oh god, man. I've dropped off on the game itself. I haven't played the game as much as I wish I had time to in recent times. Because
Should I pull out the game right now and play it while we're podcasting?
yeah, I mean,
Oh shit!
You do you, boo. I'm not gonna say it. I think I remember. I think I first came across your videos was I think it was that really funny video you did on San Diego. I think that might have been. Was it you? I don't know. I think
might have been Hawk.
It might have been, but I remember that you've done a lot of videos about how America's ridiculous.
I think I did a Bunker Hill. I think I did a Bunker Hill video where the thumbnail just had oil and burgers and guns and eagles and just.
Yeah, the Essexes are just yeah.
But,
way to go.
But let's talk about we can talk about this a bit later, but let's talk about the first what made you want to become or make Azur Lane videos? Was it just I like this game, I'll just do it?
Yeah, so yeah, it was a combination of kind of almost like a perfect storm. But I had been playing Azur Lane for, I think at the time, almost 9 months. And I got pretty interested in exercises. And when I first started, I wanted to learn how to do exercises, which is the PvP component of Azur Lane. And there wasn't great resources out there at the time. And I had fortunately become part of a group that was had a lot of information, and so I picked up a lot of information from them. And then at that point, I had actually gotten pretty comfortable. I knew the different mechanics, and I had gotten Admiral of the Navy several times, and the server top 10 and things like that. And then it was just kind of I was at a point in time where I was I have a little bit of free time. I had just basically moved and whatever. So I was okay, I'm going to make some videos because none of the other current content creators are making anything related to exercises or PvP, and this was just something that I just didn't like. It was like an empty void that wasn't being filled, and I was like, well, maybe someone else would be interested in it. So I started the channel, and then it ended up doing okay, and then I was like, all right, I'll just make some more stuff. Just because where I was at my life at that time, and I'm here. What?
And
how many years
now,
has it been? It's probably
now
2.5 years later, and
now
we're
you're
at
here.
25,000. So
yeah, congrats, man, congrats.
Best Azur Lane podcast in the world.
and the best Azur Lane podcast in the world. That's the real accomplishment there.
Yeah, that's right. You are deemed worthy to be in our presence. Behold
But
our might and majesty.
more on the video things. I checked because I think it was a few months ago, I made the entire history of Azur Lane. So I checked. The first video wasn't actually, well, it might be because of YouTube somehow bugged out, but I checked the first video you uploaded wasn't actually a exercise video. It was actually, I think,
Yes.
a
Well,
patch
technically, I
note.
think the first video I uploaded was my introduction. It might not say that if you go and look. I think it might be the second video, but it was the first one I uploaded was my introduction, which some of the OG fans might remember this introduction. It is very long. It is the quintessential beginner YouTuber. That's probably the first one. The other ones are like maintenance ones, things that I was kind of just practicing because I really wanted to make what I would say a good video. And I had never video edited really too much before. I had I wouldn't say I'd done like basic stuff, Windows Movie Maker, things like that when I was like a little kid. So like never video edited is probably a lie, but never like well, if you know what I mean. So I just wanted some practice. But if you see, even if you look back there, like definitely my first couple videos are all related. I think some of them might have been like maintenance recordings or things like that have like 1,000 views or something minuscule like that. But I feel like I think I did like a PvP video where I was like explaining my PvP team, and then I went through another video where I was like going through, ranking up in PvP. And then a little bit later, I think I ended up making guides once I kind of got that under my belt. So yeah, I don't think it was definitely not my first video, but that was definitely the intent from when I started, was to do PvP. I mean, that's why I called myself Azur Lane Meta.
Oh, so that was the reason why you named your channel Azur Lane Meta, because of PvP.
Yes. Yeah. Which is ironic because now we have meta ships in the game, like
Yeah.
which are based on metamorphosis. And then we also have like Facebook rename themselves to Meta, which
Yeah,
is based on the metaverse. So I'm like, fuck you guys. No, but it was based on the most effective tactics available. That's what it was related to. So that was the meta. Yeah.
Got homies out here min-maxing a gacha game. Like he's ahead of the curve, bro. He's ready. He's ready.
Ready for the
ready for it, man. Like no, more power to you, but this is just the thing. Like I'm just here for the JPEGs, man. I'm the Gigot crowd, right? I'm literally the Gigot crowd. I spent $2,000 on a fucking JPEG.
I watched that video too.
Yeah, it was literally. I'm out here collecting waifu. Like, as we all know, the only reason I'm on this podcast, the only actual reason I actually do YouTube full time these days, is because I use Azur Lane as a vehicle to tell the real history of boats. I'm like, okay, so how do I teach these degenerates history and make them interested? Animate.
Honestly, I appreciate that, because I feel like I know no one's gonna believe me, but I honestly feel that one of the things that, like, because there's like hundreds of anime gacha games out there, right? There's
yes.
Like, yeah, you could literally every month start a new one. And I think one of the things, there's a couple of things that differentiate, but the initial thing that got me to download the game was that history aspect. Now, I wouldn't have stayed if there weren't other aspects. Like, that's not the only reason I stayed. like friendly gacha is certainly a big reason of why I stayed. But that initial draw was that like they were related to historical warships. Like, I don't know, no one's gonna believe me. They're gonna be like, "Oh, you only came here for the boba," but no, it really wasn't. Like, there's hundreds of other games out there that I could have been at, but I wasn't because I'm interested in the history aspect.
If you admitted that you came for the booba, you're not alone because I came.
90% of people came for the booba. Like it's just the fact that's how Azur Lane makes its money. And to be fair,
I'm perfectly fine with that. If you guys want to fund my like gotcha meta stuff by going with your other stuff, that's fine. Be my guest.
Dude, like, man, like you see the content coming out of the fan space for Azur
I will say
Lane,
this before
Shapely boats.
I will say this before I was an actual content creator, I did not know the AL Doujin space existed. I'll be 100% serious. I literally like figured that out when I started getting like followers who that's why they joined the game. A lot of my followers are like, "Oh yeah, I joined the game because of like a doujin I found." And then I figured maybe since I'm going to be here my whole time, I actually like learn how to actually play the damn game. And that's how I found your channel. So yeah, I would honestly say when I like first started the game, I did not even knew the doujins existed. Now I'm well aware.
So doujins helped gain you subscribers.
Oh,
What?
for sure. Yeah.
100% got me subscribers. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, like I don't even think you do anything lewd. I haven't watched all your videos, Animarchy, but I don't think you do anything lewd on your channel, do you?
No. Well, I mean, I think okay. So here's the thing, right? A lot of people have mentioned my videos is that I've got my own really pretentious sales pitch, as every good content creator should have. You should have your own pretentious sales pitch. It's a corporate necessity these days. You got to have your own brand, if you will. And the way I've started defining it these days, it is I write fiction. It just so happens that the stories are true. Right? But the thing is, what I've started using, like originally it was just there as a tie-in because I was an anime channel. I became an Azur Lane I became like an Azur Lane YouTuber, and I became a history YouTuber really by accident. And the reason why is I originally wanted to be an anituber, like everyone else does. Right?
Yes.
Everyone wants to watch anime and then just make money off of that, right?
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
right.
yes.
That's literally what I wanted to do. I was writing video essays and shit, and no one cared. Like, like to get a little bit hashtag controversial. Not, I promise I won't get on my soapbox like I always do. But like, I made this massive video essay when that George Floyd shit went down about psychopaths and the relation between the police and the state and so on, right? And relations between the average person and the police, and how Psychopaths, the anime, explores that, and Ghost in the Shell, and how basically government cops bad, but it's okay in a weird way because society itself is entirely predicated on the idea that violence is the justified cause of the state. I was basically if you've heard of Philosophy Tube, imagine I was trying to be Philosophy Tube but anime. Basically, is what I was trying to be, right?
Yeah.
Didn't they already do that?
No one fucking cared. 3,000 people watched it, and like the few people who did were like, "Holy shit, this is professional level work. You should be way bigger than you are." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I've been saying that too, but no, nobody cares." Plus,
that's
the
typically
algorithm,
not the thing that most people, I feel like, open up their YouTube app or whatever, go to YouTube browser and be like, this is what I want to watch today to relax and rewind from my daily grind.
You say that, but big video essay channels like H-Bomber Guy, Sean, all those guys, like they get millions of views for their shit. And I feel like in some cases my production value is actually better. I'm gonna be real. Yeah, I was saying
calling him out.
I'm calling him out because you look at there is, but the problem is video essays are like 80% of like the quote highbrow content, and so we found out that there is a garbage flavor parody podcast, so we have to choose a different one. We're Rubbish Palette now. We are
Rubbish
so
palette?
we're not even
Yeah.
we're not even trash taste anymore. We're the parody of the parody. We're like what? We're not even wish.com. We're that sketchy guy in an alley equivalent of trash taste now. But as the trash taste boys said, there's this period and I felt called out. I made a video about it saying I got like a meme about me being called out about it, but it's like there's this period for all Anitubers between like say 1,000 to 1,000 subs, which I was at, and like 100,000, right? There's that period where all they do is these video essays, and the only thing Anitubers care about is how good their video essay is compared to everybody else, and we all rate each
Oh
other.
yeah, they
It's a
rate
real
each
hard.
other.
It's a real hard. I would call this as the graveyard of channels. It's a real hard grind from 1,000 to 100,000. Yeah.
Bro, that you
Yeah.
have to get that breakout. You have to get that breakout, and the only reason I'm able to do it is because I've found my niche. I'm in the same, I guess, like they've had more luck in the algorithm than me, unfortunately. For me at least, good for them, but they've had more luck in the algorithm. But like, Laserpig and his recent meteoric rise. If you watch one of Laserpig's videos and then watch one of mine, you'll see a lot of similarities. I noticed it when I was watching his video. I'm like, dude, he uses some of the same motifs and jokes and styles that I do. And I was like, wow, man, I'm feeling a bit competitive here because he had one video.
That's the thing. I feel like you can get very competitive looking at stats, which is not a good thing.
No, that's what I'm saying, right? Because like he had one video on the T-34, right? One video on the T-34 tank that hit 1 million views, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, he had other videos which were pretty similar to that, which were just a meme essay with a bunch of actual facts in it. Which again is shit that I do. So he comes in, and so people go to that one, and then so he goes from like 3,000 or 4,000 subscribers to 156,000 in the span of.
Here's what I like to think about,
like a couple months.
The
like,
competitiveness. I obviously acknowledge that like there is a little bit of competitiveness. Like if you're the first person to do a video after a certain thing, someone's going to watch yours, and then once they watch yours, they don't necessarily need to watch someone else's. But a lot of times, especially with, evergreen content, which it sounds more like what you do, is where you like somebody watches a video and they're interested in that topic, and the algorithm now says, oh, this person's interested in that topic. So you're like more likely to be on that person's homepage. You're more likely to be in that person's recommended videos. And so like there's a little bit of almost collaboration there where even your competitors can draw people who have never been interested in your topic towards your topic. Just because like think about it when like a big YouTuber decides I'm going to like open Pokemon packs or I'm going to play Yu-Gi-Oh. It just like draws a whole bunch of people who wouldn't have been there to that space. So I don't know. There's a little competition, but a lot of it's also like, at the word I'm looking for, I'm forgetting it. But basically, you coexist in a way of like sending each other views between like your two channels.
Yeah, like
I mean,
if I look at my analytics, you can see that like in some of my World War II videos, Laserpig's videos recommend mine. Right?
Yeah.
So it's just like, I guess I can't be too mad. But it's just that feeling of when you've been like grinding your way up from.
We've all been grinding, man. There's very few YouTubers who haven't been grinding. The YouTube algorithm is designed to make you have to grind because they want you to be that endless supply of content that they can get for nearly free or pennies on the dollar. And so their algorithm is designed to make you grind.
Honestly,
grinding.
I don't still understand it. I don't even know how I made it.
Okay, so like I have hope. I have hope that I'm starting to understand the algorithm a little, right?
But then it goes downhill. Or is it like that?
Yeah, because like a mate of mine, he runs a very famous abridged series, at least in our community.
I love abridged series.
Girls,
yeah. I'm friends with the guy who runs the Girls from Panzer abridged series.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. I don't think I've watched that one, but I'm sure
Oh my
it's good.
god, you are missing out, bro. It's one of the funniest things I've ever watched. Anyway, he has started. He's also a big gamer, and he's like me. He's like me. It's like I want to make anime video essays, but like, I'm stuck here talking about like tanks and shit. Like to be fair, I love that too. But like you know what I mean. It's just like I want to talk. I just want to grill. I just want to grill, man. I just want to grill. You know what I
No,
mean?
I
But,
feel
hey,
I feel the same thing because I feel like my channel is so into Azur Lane, and I like Azur Lane. Like I'm not like lying when I say I don't play a lot of Azur Lane. I don't enjoy it, but my life is not mono Azur Lane. There are plenty of other things that I'm interested in, including other games, and like those videos get like 1,000, 3,000 views, and then Azur Lane video like 20,000, 15,000, whatever. So it's like, okay, I'm obviously going to make Azur Lane videos, but I would definitely like to maybe make not every video an Azur Lane video, but every
exactly.
time the algorithm really punishes you, they're like, stay in your lane, bro.
Yeah, like I can. Yeah, but we were talking about this the other week because like, here's the thing, right? I made like of all the sort of real tanks and real planes and all that sort of thing, all of these sort of different stories, right? All of these different things, right? Like Azur Lane, Bismarck got 200,000 because Bismarck is Bismarck, and everybody knows her, and everybody wants to talk about Bismarck, and it's a famous story. Prince Eugen got a bunch because horny. Okay,
She is
Enterprise-
the number one oathed ship.
Wait,
Enterprise has done reasonably well because Enterprise is famous, but she's not done as well. She's sort of grown. The Enterprise series is my biggest flagship series, excuse the pun, on the channel, because everyone loves her, and she does well for me financially, not outright as much as the other videos, but as a collective, she does well because you watch episode 1 and then you watch 2 and 3 and then eventually 4 by the end of this year, hopefully, right?
So,
Okay.
so
Okay.
as
Okay.
a franchise, like a Marvel franchise, Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, Iron Man 3.
Yeah, kind of, like in a weird way, yeah. She's the only ship on that I've done videos on that has had multiple installments, right? For that very reason.
If I was a better content creator, I would probably do more installments and hooks and things like that. But most of my videos are like, this is what I'm interested in, or
But,
it's a data mine. I gotta do that.
but what's like a video like you're proud of? Like I like this. I'd watch this again if I was a
Honestly,
normal viewer.
I'm still proud of my my PvP guides. I know they're not like most people aren't looking for PvP guides, but I think I did a really good job on them. I think they're still pretty relevant. Like one of my favorite things about YouTube is learning from YouTube. I always love learning from YouTube.
You do learn a lot.
And when I was growing up, like always go to how-to videos on YouTube. Those I would search. So there was like a time of where I'm like, I go to YouTube to learn things. Like I don't go there for entertainment all the time. I go there to learn things. And then somewhere around when I got older, the YouTube was like, well, this doesn't make us a lot of money. It makes us a lot more money if we get people who are entertained and we can stick them here for like 4 hours of their night and show them a bunch of ads. So then YouTube switched from being educational to being entertainment, which is like kind of fine, but I kind of miss that educational part. So I try to stay more in that realm. So I really I don't know. They're not like, oh, it's a guide. How great is that to watch? Like it's not entertainment, but I'm like pretty proud of the information I provided in that. And like, sure, I do fun things. I have streams where I have fun and things like that. And I have entertainment type of videos as well, but I definitely want to always have some form of information. So even in the ones where I have fun, I like to have at least fun on top of some fun fact or some useful information, because I don't know, that's how I grew up on YouTube, whereas like that's where you go to learn, and now YouTube is like that's where you go to spend endless hours of entertainment and things like that. So
YouTube is one of those weird things where I think about it now. When I think about it, I mean, granted, it's my job these days, so it's a bit different for me. But
are you full time?
yes.
Nice.
Hi. I live at home though, so it's easier for me. Which is like I'm not big enough to be in a position where like I can say it's a comfortable existence. Essentially,
Yeah, I
I
think
got
most of my math says the average, and it depends on like all these different things, but the average is about 100K before you start being like, you know, comfortable.
where it's a
Yeah.
comfortable regular job. When you're like the biggest risk about being a YouTuber I found is that there's no guarantees that your video will do well.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no
Which
guarantee.
the biggest risk is when you like
don't
go to a bank and you're trying to be like, yeah, I have an income, and they're like, well, that doesn't help. We don't know what you're gonna get paid next month, so we can't give you a loan.
Exactly, right?
I find the risk that your channel may like die in a few months. Like you start YouTube and then the bubble bursts. Because that happens
Yeah.
with channels.
That does happen to channels, yeah. It happens all the time.
Which is why people are more skeptical of lending you money.
Gotta work hard to get subs, and you gotta work twice as hard to keep them and still get them.
And I've noticed that I've
Matter
actually
as much as like views.
I mean, the thing is, I've noticed that my videos have like started to like when I look at what content works for me. There's a couple of major ones. First is covering the war in Ukraine. I hate to admit it, but that covering the war in Ukraine does help. Like
Current
it
events
really does.
always get clicks.
Current events always get clicks, and it's one of those weird things because again, calling back into the Laserpig discussion, it's the same thing, right? His second biggest video is literally called Putin's Big Oof, right? It's his second biggest video, and you want to know what really pisses me off about it, and I'll tell you why this makes me angry. And I know it's just me being me, but you look at that video, right? You look at my Ukraine videos. I go through Twitter's Gemini of the West, who's really good. I go through Twitter. I go through Telegram. I go through all of this, and I assemble all of this footage, all of these maps, all of these photos, all of this, right? Slap it together, and I'm like, I spend 2 weeks putting this together in high production value, tailoring the script, record it, upload it. It gets maybe 100,000 views, and granted,
That's pretty respectable.
Because they're an hour long, of course. Like, I mean, as I say, one doesn't talk about one's earnings, but I'm fully transparent. Like, 100,000 views with like 20,000 hours of watch time on an hour-long video is like around $500, right? Australian. So maybe that's 300, 400 US, right? For a video.
I can't barely even make 5-minute videos. How you just come up with an hour?
And when you do that, right, it gets you enough money to, and when you're living at home like me, plus you're getting passive revenue from all of your other videos that are getting other views, because that's the big thing. If one of your videos does well on the algorithm, they're going to click on your other ones because it will recommend your other content, right?
If they're related.
So if you, I've noticed this, that every time I've uploaded like a gaming video, like my Postscriptum one, right? Postscriptum is a dying game. It's a game that no one really plays, right? But if you go and look at my Postscriptum video, it started out, it only got like a couple thousand views, and it wasn't that impressive, right? Then the algorithm picked up, and then my reaction to The Last Tiger from Battlefield, my reaction to COD Vanguard picked it up and started recommending the Postscriptum one and everything like that. And then all of a sudden, kaboom, it goes up to 80,000 views. Like, bang, like that. Right, without warning, right? So
yeah, sometimes you can really see the algorithm when it hits you. But I would say for the most part, and maybe this is just related to my channel, is a lot of my videos are not particularly the most evergreen. They're more like because they're more related to the most recent updates of Azur Lane, and those are changing. And so like a video from 2 years ago might not necessarily be the most up to date and relevant. So I don't particularly have I have a little bit of like passive long stream, but I don't see it being huge. And I don't know what you guys think for your channels, but my like passive long stream income is like basically minimal.
I mean, I've got I usually have my analytics page permanently up, which I refresh every morning to check. I know it's not healthy, but I do it just because it's my job. So at the
No,
moment,
that is not. You should
Bro.
set a time of the week and only check it at that time. Like if you want to be a little bit more, you should say, all right, I'm only going to check it 24 hours after I post a video. And that's it. Like you should really not be checking it all the time because I feel like get very stressed out. Here's how I'd say, you don't want your mood to be 100% dictated by what's on your channel dashboard. And I feel like if you're always checking that, it gets you very stressed. So I really, if I do have to give you a recommendation, you should probably set a specific time and definitely check it. Analytics are very important, especially if it's your job. But like set a specific time that you're gonna go and check it. Don't check it like every hour.
all right. So like I getcha. So let me put it to you this way. Because I generally I try to keep a release schedule where I get one video out every couple weeks. I try to. Not always, but I try to. And that video usually does decently. I've only really had 2 big flops in recent times. And they were both tangents off the Ukraine situation. Thankfully, I had a sponsor for one of them, so that was good. But the point was what if Ukraine goes nuclear and Ukrainian heroes of World War II, right? Because that was around when Putin was like talking about nuking us for the millionth time, and Victory Day, right? Because everyone's making a big deal about Russia. They have Victory Day every year. So I'm like, hey, well, it's Victory Day and the Ukrainians are in World War II as well. So, here they are. Neither one did very well, right? And so those are the only 2 big flops. Recently, other than that, I've recently been averaging around 50,000 views for each video dropped and 1 or 2 big ones, right?
And you said you put out a video every 2 to 3 weeks. Is that what you said?
I try to.
So that's like 100,000 a month usually, probably.
Yeah. So more than that. So I've gotten 22,000 views in the past 48 hours.
Okay, that's very nice.
Okay, and that's between the air war in Ukraine videos. I've started doing shorts because I've started doing TikTok to expand my presence because again,
Oh yeah, I've seen.
I mean, I can't judge, but I because I do the same thing, but also like judging, including myself.
Yeah, judge me. Yeah, judge me. 100%. Yeah, look,
I've seen both of them.
they're pretty good though. They're pretty funny. I'm gonna admit. But like, the thing is, in terms of passive revenue earners, like, ironically enough, like the Azure Lane and Girls and Panzer content, they are really good passive earners. They really
That's
are.
good.
Like, not like crazy, right? But even now, even all these months later, 400 people have watched each one of my Azure Lane videos. Like each. So 400 people on each Azure Lane video have watched in the past 2 days, right? And if they're really interested, they'll stay for the whole thing, or they'll stay for a good chunk of it, or they'll put it on in the background, right? Which is like,
Also,
if 400 people watch like an hour, like.
Also, this is totally unrelated, but remember when I said I was gonna have like the bot grind on the side while the podcast was happening?
Yeah.
My bot just got me a blood sugar drop.
Oh, she's
damn.
She's got to
You see this? You see this? Big brain plays. Meta is on the front.
She's cute, isn't it?
I literally have a Bletcher new like tag right now sitting here as I'm doing this podcast.
All right.
She's completely different to her sister.
I want Meta's take on this. Your position. What is your position on Azure Lane jerking off the Wehraboos by inventing German boats instead of giving us the boats that aren't in the game yet? What's your position on that?
This is a great question.
My position is
I'm going to crack over to Cold One.
They obviously have to cater somewhat to their fan base, and you can look very clearly that the global server, which makes out about 15% of their revenue, is very heavily favoriting the German faction. You can see that in all the PR ships. You can see that in where they spend their money on skins. You can see that all the way around. So it makes sense to me that they want to put in German events. Of course, Germans historically don't have as many ships as, say, the US faction, who was pumping them out. So I don't know. I think that I'm perfectly fine if they want to have like a German ship in the PR system, have some paper ships. I actually was really excited when they started bringing like German Empire, like SMS ships in. That was actually really cool.
That was nice.
I think I don't know. I feel like we have more German events than I would like, but I understand from their perspective where it's like our German events are the ones that make us the most money on global. And
I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to say this. This is what my position is. Now that the 4th anniversary is gone, I'm going to say this. 4th anniversary Japan, the Japanese 4th anniversary, right?
Will be most likely Mushashi.
Yeah, Yamato or Musashi, or we fucking riot.
You mean the 5th Japanese anniversary, right?
You know what I mean.
Yeah, the 5th.
Okay,
yeah,
I thought you were actually talking about last year's and comparing it to ours, but you're talking about the one in a month, the 5th.
Yeah, the one in a month. Like Yamato or Musashi, and given they didn't do Iowa, they did New Jersey. I'm guessing it's gonna be Musashi.
I mean, if you go by how many events each faction has gotten, I think the last event the US Navy got an event was, I think, 11 months ago.
So here it is. If they were being 100% fair, they probably should make a US event. However, we know for a fact, HMS knows for a fact they're not fair like that. And it's a Japanese anniversary. It's going to be a Japanese event.
Which sucks because it just, why are you doing this? I mean, yes,
maybe we'll get one in December. I'm like, if they give one in December, it's not a big deal to me.
Yeah.
At least.
I mean, yeah, Pearl Harbor and all that jazz. I guess. Like, I try to sync my videos on certain things with big events, right?
Dude, if they have an event for Pearl Harbor, if they have a US event for Pearl Harbor, I don't think they do that because I feel like in the last year or so, they've been getting some pressure to make it less related to historical events.
Which is good for me because you know what that means. It means I get a niche, I get a space. I can grind. I can
make
grind
like
away.
A full German paper event, and you're like, well, none of these ships actually existed. I have no content related to history.
Dude, like, I was okay with Frederick the Great because I'm sorry, Mummy. I'm sorry. What? But in all seriousness, like I got it. Like I was like, look, they're gonna have Iowa, they're gonna have Yamato at some point. So every faction's gonna need a super battleship. I get it, right? But like, it's the fact that every single time there's like 5 new Ironblood ships, and you're like, okay, so like most of these didn't exist.
They're all fucking paper shit.
They're all paper shit, and I get it. But the problem is, this is the thing, and again, this is a long-standing tradition on this podcast, calling out my fans in the fucking comments, right?
Yeah, I gotta be careful here. Most of my fans, I feel like, are German faction fans.
Wait.
Yeah, I call them out because
one question. So, Azur Lane Meta, in scale of 1 to 10, how big of a history buff or /nerd are you?
So I always like to preface this. I am a history buff. Ironically, before I got into Azur Lane, I was not a naval war history buff.
So yes, thank you.
So I really enjoy history, but the type of history that I typically enjoy is not related to warships. And then I got into Azur Lane, and now I know a lot more about naval warship history than I ever would have gotten interested into.
So here's the big question. What branch of history were you in before you got into warships? Because I'm the same. I never got into naval history until I started doing my actual lane content. So I got to know. What were your...
I always like learning about like the rise and fall of different civilizations throughout different time periods and kind of what their what they had to go through. I am also somewhat of a war history buff, or at least political war, like what political events led up to a specific war or something like that. So those sort of things were the things that I was more interested in.
Gang. All right, that makes sense. I dig that 100%. Because I always found that the historical aspect of like wars, one thing that I've always... Okay, so this is just an academic professional chip on the shoulder thing, so forgive me about this. But I'm friends with a lot of, like, given my weebdom preceding
Your weebdom.
My weebdom preceding it, and my for lack of a better term, my political leanings, right? Because of my political leanings and my anime sort of field, I was among academic historians because I went to university, all that shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because that branch of the historians I was with are all very lefty like me, a lot of them are... Let me put it this way. I am the only military historian amongst all of my friends.
Okay.
Like my actual mates who aren't historians but like history buffs and like play games and shit with me, they're military historians too, because obviously, right? They're military history guys too. Right?
There happens to be a correlation between military historians and playing those grand campaign board games.
Yeah, there is, because that's what we do, right? We like doing it, right? But like the thing is, all the professional quote historians, the guys who are like doing their masters, are now where I decided to pursue a career as a edutainment guy instead. All the guys doing their masters and shit now, they are all like sociology historians and cultural historians, and they look at me like I am like they look at me and other military historians as like, fucking like, manufactured groupies like rocks. They're like, they're not real historians. They're just like battles and stuff. They're not real.
So I'm not necessarily in the throngs of the different factions of historians, but I've always kind of felt as an outsider that military historians and non-military historians like to point the finger at each other a lot. That they like to differentiate. Yeah.
The reason why is because like...
Which I enjoy both parts of history. So I'm like sitting here, I'm like, I can see your point. I enjoy that. I can see your point. I enjoy that. Like, yeah.
What it is like politically in the United States, especially, as I'm sure you're aware, of most of our American viewers, history is a liberal arts major, right? History is liberal arts generally, right? And the political views of those in liberal arts do not correlate well with the military. They never really do. Right? And so, oh my god, the war is bad? Like, you know what I mean? Like, war is bad, okay? Like, oh my god, cringe? Like, you know what I mean? So,
to be fair, I think that if your political leanings are playing a large part in the way that you read history, I feel like that
100%.
makes you a bad historian. Like,
but the problem is,
you can obviously have your own opinion, but if you're being an actual true historian, you should probably be reading all sorts of sides and trying to be
100%, right? So, and that's the thing. I actually think that the military historians are less biased for that very reason, because the thing is, and this is my argument for why I prefer military history above everything else, war itself, when you engage in warfare, war is an inherently political act, right? And it encompasses every single factor of a society. When a country goes to war, as we've seen, it is the single biggest focus of the political realities of that country, and therefore everything else in that country revolves around it, right?
For a short time period, yeah, during the war.
Yeah.
The thing about war, at least being a historian, that's difficult is the history of war tends to be written by the victors, and obviously
Yes.
very biased in that regard. So I feel like it can be kind of hard to differentiate your accounts when you only have one account as a military historian.
Yes.
So I think there's
you have
almost a
to try and
bias
get
in that
two.
regard where you're like, I need to have good sources, but like the people who are alive and one are the only sources I can get, and the other ones just aren't here, so I can't source them, if you know what I mean.
Which is why it's very interesting in terms of World War II, as that wasn't really the case. World War II is a bit of an odd one in terms of its study, which is why I find it personally so interesting. Is because
OC Gangsta, you want to get in here? I feel like he's
he can't, like, his mic's like
Hello?
his mic's
No, wait.
He's being held as a hostage.
Help me. Help. Maggie's got my head. Okay,
but that
I do military history, but we also got politics history as well on our core.
yep, you do. I know that.
We've
And
got
this is what I'm saying, OC. Go on. Go.
sometimes we work together really well, but other times we just fucking like debate the shit out. There was this fucking commie in the class in the seminar, and he was like a Mao Zedong supporter. He had the little a beret, a Mao Zedong bloody replica jacket. He had long hair, glasses, fucking arrogant little shit. And came to the one of fascism and communism, and he put his side of across against communism. And then it was like, does anyone that like want to give their support to fascism? I was like, me. And we had like
That could definitely be taken out of context in a lot of bad.
Yeah, OC and I fight all the time.
No, I'm just saying that last comment, like if you take it verbatim out of context, you're like, what?
Yeah,
that
but this is the thing. This is the thing. That.
And the lecturer had to like break us apart because we were just going at each other's throats. We were throwing arguments.
Actually, were you like fighting?
It was more of a like a debate, like a really. It was like Biden versus Trump.
I mean, hopefully it was more interesting than Biden versus Trump, because that debate was really irritating. I'm gonna be honest with you. But like,
Would you just
again,
shut up, man?
just shut up, man. Like seriously though, I find that what I was sort of getting at is that with military history, you have to understand everything else around it, because I find that when you like the same thing that they accuse us of is actually what the other historical disciplines do, which is, I want to do social history, so they study about the working class history of Victorian London in 1860, and like, it's so good. I'm like, yeah, look, I'm studying World War II, like I'm studying, but if you're going to understand the fundamental parts of World War II, you have to understand the Nazi Party, you have to understand this, you have to understand, and then why did the Nazi Party popular? You have to study the economy and how this happened and how this happened, and so like, if you get, and I'm going to call them out. And I know the podcast is going to get mad. If you know what, you in the comments, fight me. I don't care. Wehraboos are the problem.
No, we are not. We are the cream of the cream. We are the superior ones. How dare you say that?
Wehraboos are the problem. Wehraboos are the problem. You know what?
I think any
Matong.
historian can do a good job at getting context, and I think any historian in any discipline can do a bad job at that. So I don't necessarily think that like, all war historians do this and all regular historians. I think it really depends on the individual level of how
100%.
well you interpret and take context from other things, because everything is interconnected. Like, think about in your day why you decide to do something versus something else. You have a lot of factors you might not even be aware of when you're making that decision, and then when you have to account for millions of people's decisions and how they culminate together, there's going to be a lot of of factors that play in there, and if you don't take those into account, then that makes your research less valuable and thorough.
I think so, yeah, and I agree with you there. But that's the biggest issue that I found is that when you talk about like general historical context in terms of wars, like wars to me have always been the most fascinating historical discussion, which is probably reflected in my content more from the human example rather than the actual material historian example.
I think that's true, that some people find that wars are the most exciting parts of history, and I think just to play devil's advocate here a little bit, is the non-war historians sometimes can view that there are certain war historians that are only interested in looking at war and then war and war, and if you're telling the history of the world just by wars, you are missing a majority of the human experience, because that's not the whole picture. Now, if you are a war historian that's trying to say what led up to this war and you take in other accounts, that's fine. But I think there are war historians out there that are trying to explain the whole history of the world in just wars, which I think is wrong. And I think that's something that they fear.
Man, Azur Lane Meta is out here calling out Anthony Beevor. He's just like throwing down. He's just throwing down.
I don't know who that is. So apparently I'm calling out someone I don't know who it is.
Yeah, you're calling out Anthony Beevor. You're just throwing down with him. But like I think the biggest thing for me and why I sort of studied it so aggressively and my writing style, actually circling back to the Azur Lane content for just a brief second here.
Why it's an Azur Lane, podcast. We should talk about that at some point, maybe.
That's why we call ourselves Rubbish Palette now. We were Garbage Flavor, now we're Rubbish Palette. The reason why we say that is, we're supposed to be an Azur Lane podcast, just like they were supposed to be an anime podcast. Do we talk about Azur Lane? Fuck no. But what it is, at least from what I can say, is the reason why I started using Azur Lane to sort of write the history of the warships and that is because, like a lot of people sort of look at it for the waifu aspect, and sure, but there's something core even at the even belying their 2D nature. By having the waifu on there, the ship ceases to be a ship; it becomes a person, and then you can write the history of the boat, of the ship, as a person, as a biography, rather than as an analytical sort of historical thing, right?
And I think that's unique, and I'm interested in it, but I also think a lot of historians are going to have an aneurysm when they hear that.
Yes, but here is the thing. War and the human experience is an inherently emotional experience. And if you are able to, the human creature is like, everyone on this fucking world thinks they're like, thinks they're fucking Spock, right? Yes, I'm the only objective one.
I don't know about that. I think there are a lot of people who are self-aware enough to know they're not objective.
Oh, 100%. But what I'm sort of saying is everyone goes into something convinced they're right. Everyone does. I don't care how cool you think you are. Everyone goes in thinking they're right.
I'm going to walk into this argument and I'm going to be wrong.
Yeah, right? 100%, right? And the thing is, when you look at someone and you go on and you're trying to tell a story, when you're trying to relay the history of something, I don't know. This is maybe me being a bit esoteric academic douchebag here. But have you read anything by? Have you ever read something called called Pac-Man? It's early shit. Have you ever read David Glantz? He's the historian. He's a historian who does World War II in the East. Red Army versus the Denmark.
To be fair, the name doesn't ring a bell, but there's a very good chance that I would have read something and not remembered who wrote it, to be fair.
He is the best by far historian to read regarding World War II in the East. the best in English anyway. But even then, as we've seen with Russia in the modern day, Russian historians have a tendency to be influenced by certain parties inside their government, somewhat.
Everybody's influenced by something.
Yeah, a bit more aggressively than others. You should
Yes, well, there's a degree there. There's a very, very important scale of degree there. That I think.
He gives a fun tale in one of his presentations about the Soviet record keeping of World War II, and how we only found out a certain battle in Operation Mars, so the attack on Rzhev, while Stalingrad was happening near Moscow. We only found out that battle happened after the collapse of the Soviet Union, because they erased it from the history books to protect the political career of the guy who was in charge, right? So, that's the kind of 250,000 Soviet citizens died in this battle, and it just completely vanished, right?
I'm sure if the U.S. collapsed, there would be some fun tidbits that people would find.
Bro.
I hate we always shit on the Soviet Union that way, and they certainly hit a bunch of crap, and it's good that it's come to light. But I'm not naive enough to think that the current country I live in doesn't have its own
100%
hidden laundry.
But what I'm getting at is, this is the kind of level that Glantz is on. He's an ex-US Army colonel in armor, and he went through the entire Soviet archives after the collapse of the Soviet Union. He went through all of the archives while they were open and pulled out all of these documents, translated them into English. And so he is the foremost authority, right? And I've read a lot of Glantz, a lot. I have all of his books in my room here.
Thing is, a really good endorsement here.
Thing is, you read his book, and then you open it up, you read his book, and you're like, oh wow, this is incredible. This is the Battle of Stalingrad by Glantz, the best Soviet war in the East author, right? And you read it. On 43rd, the 43rd Mechanized Infantry Division advanced to the Northern Tractor Factory on the 15th of April 1942. They encountered this and did this, and then there was this fight, and then General Sosvosky said this and did that, and then did this, and then this happened, and you're sitting there. I'm like, okay, I'm reading a stat sheet, is what I'm reading. I am reading a battlefield report from 1942, which is cool.
It's good to have as a reference and a source. Not necessarily the most enjoyable thing to read.
But holy shit, man. There's only one I've had much harder times with, and that is a book by Robert Forczyk called Where the Iron Crosses Grow, which is about the German campaign in Crimea, in the invasion of Crimea in Operation Barbarossa, and then the subsequent Soviet counterattack in the liberation of Ukraine in 1944. And again, he's doing the entire Battle of the Crimean Peninsula, which was shorter and smaller scale than Stalingrad, right? So he's got the complete Wehrmacht records and war diary of the units involved, right? And so he's going down to individual pioneer battalions. And he tells the whole story of the Battle of Crimea step by step, every infantry action, every battle, right? Every street block, right? And it's fascinating because you can then track the entire battle on a map if you want to.
It's good for the future, because if it isn't written like that, it's going to get lost.
Yeah, 100%.
And like I said, it's not the most enjoyable thing, but it's one of those things where it's somebody's got to do it or it's going to get lost.
Yeah. So when you look at that, it's the most vital historical documents. But then, if you pivot, and the historian who's influenced my style the most is James Holland, who writes an incredible series of books called World War II in the West, A New History. And basically the idea of his entire novel series there was to remove every time his complaint was, and I agree with him, that every time you tell World War II you've either got General Patton and Field Marshal Montgomery racing to Messina in Sicily. You've got Rommel in the desert doing cool guy shit. You've got the Titanic clash in the east between the evil fascists and the our friends for now communists. You've got all this grand drama, and then you've got the guy in the foxhole staring down the Tiger tank, right? And then the rest of World War II is completely forgotten. Like the entire middle chunk in between those, gone, right? And so what he did was,
one thing about war is there is, especially when you look at a history, I feel like the events seem very close together, and the big battle parts drawn out because that's where the attention gets placed, and because like we're looking at it in the past, the big events seem closer together, and those big events seem longer. But I feel like war has a lot of standstill and a lot of uncertainty, and like a lot of people live their relatively normal lives through the war, just trying to almost ignore it, so to speak, until it comes to their front doorstep.
And I hate to sound really fucking callous here, but that has been what I think one of the most interesting facets about the current conflict in Ukraine. The fact is, we literally have a war in Europe going on right now that, if a couple of things change or go seriously wrong, could end up in a direct confrontation between the Eastern Bloc and NATO, right? If 2 or 3 things go wrong while this is happening, shit gets real fast, and yet we're all still going to work. We're all still going and doing shit. Like, we're checking the news, checking the front lines, seeing what's happening, but on the whole, everyone's still doing their thing. And World War II was the same. It was on a grander scale, don't get me wrong, but it was still the same sort of thing.
I mean, what is that time period? I feel insulted that I don't remember the name, but I did not come prepared for anything here. But what's that time period where they have like a special name for this time period when like England and France declared war on Germany, but then didn't do anything for like 6 or 9 months.
Phony war.
That's the phony war. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was looking for. Oh my god, he gonna put that meme on.
Dude, you got to put it on screen. But like, seriously, what's really cool about that whole moment is, the what was great about that was there was a really fun debate that happened in the Houses of Parliament during the phony war, which I always like to talk about, which is why the RAF were dropping leaflets on the Germans instead of bombs. And it was because they wanted to negotiate with Germany a peace and see if they could approach a diplomatic solution. And there was a massive debate in the House of Commons about whether it was right for Bomber Command to bomb the factories in the Ruhr Valley building the tanks.
Oh yeah, because they were like private property or something.
They're private property.
Yeah.
They're private property. They've belonged to the Rheinmetall Corporation. I worked with them before the war. You can't just blow them up. It would be unthinkable. Next thing you know, they'll blow up Woolwich Arsenal and it will be a tragedy. A bit moot point since later.
To be fair, they did not want to go back to another world war. I know. Obviously, in hindsight is 2020, but at that point in time, they're like, we don't want to go back to World War I. We didn't really like that.
Yeah. But again, it's sort of one of those things where when you look at war, there's this whole part that's taken out, and that is where the fun parts are, in my opinion, is because operationally, the entire sequence of events, we talk about it in the occasional documentary. It's mentioned as a sort of an afterthought, but the operational realities of World War II are where all the really cool shit is happening. Because like,
if France was ready to strike immediately when they declared war, I think we would have been in a very, very different.
It would have been game over if they'd attacked. It would have been game over because there's nothing the Wehrmacht could have done. They had like 10 divisions in total. But what's interesting about it is that World War II, operationally speaking, there was a whole different war going on in the industry sectors and the business sectors of World War II at the time. Like Kaiser shipyards, like the organization of the German war economy. The German war economy is such a fucking shit show. It is the biggest shit show I have ever read about in my life. Okay, and I have studied some shit shows throughout my life. Trust me. But the German war economy is one of those things where, like, a lot of people try to sell it as this sort of monolith of, yes, the Führer says this, and then this happens. But the fact of the matter is, like, how the Americans and like the Western sort of world perceives Nazi Germany's war economy is actually sort of like the reverse in a weird way. Everyone sort of thinks about, yes, it was the power of capitalism and free enterprise that built up the factories and defeated the evil fascists. But it's actually the other way around. America, when the war started, was like, Roosevelt was like, right, New Deal. We've done the New Deal. All right, we're going to consolidate everything into a Department of War. Now the big difference was they cooperated with private industry. They're like, GM, all you guys, Ford, everybody, Kaiser Shipyards. Okay, we're going to organize into a central war committee. We're going to do this. We're going to hand out contracts to you guys. They're going to subcontract to these guys. We're going to build planes, build tanks. We're going to get it done, right? The German war economy stayed basically as the like complete capitalist system. Like, yes, there was state oversight after shit went sideways real quick and they had to consolidate under Speer. But the reason why production was so sort of awkward earlier on is because it was basically an economic free-for-all at the start. They didn't want to over-regulate business too much because the Nazis had derived their power from corporate interests in the first place. That was what was underwriting them. And so when things started happening, like, they didn't have executive control over what the companies were doing beyond like the incentivized contracts. Like, so when Messerschmitt 109s were being built, for example, the fighter plane, like, okay, we need a new fighter. So we need you to work on the new fighter project, right? So they were expecting a competitor to the Focke-Wulf 190 from Messerschmitt, right? Like, Erhard Misch and Speer go to Messerschmitt's factory, and there's like, oh, yo, I've got this new jet over here. Also, I got this new plane I'm developing over here. Oh, dude, have you seen this transport plane I've got going on right now? Check this. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? We asked you to build something.
We need like 100. We need like hundreds of these planes, not like one cool jet.
Right? And again, the tanks were doing the same. When they were making the reason why the MG42 was made, right? The MG42 was made because it's stamped metal. Bang, 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 slap it together, interchangeable barrels. It's a fantastic design. The reason they developed the MG42 is because they were originally using the MG34. And the MG34 had like 150 more man hours in production or something stupid than the 30 cal from the US or the Bren from the Brits for the same, because they would machine it over and over and over again. They'd use twice the amount of raw material. They machine it, and then it would have like 16 makers stamps before it was allowed to be issued to the army, right? And German uniforms, again, like, they had their dress uniform, their service dress uniform, their garrison uniform, their combat uniform, and each one had a different fabric, a different style, a different type of leather used for their attachments and shit, right? And so all this is going on, and the Americans and the Brits are like, yo, why don't we just like make one uniform and then just make a shitload of it? That's a good idea. And then the way we do it, we standardize this pattern, and then we incentivize people to help produce that shit by subcontracting, which they did. And it worked really well. So until the German war economy got sort of centralized and organized later on in the war, and even then it still had problems. Like, from about 1936 till 1942, the German war economy was basically this gigantic game of musical chairs in a capitalist oligarch free-for-all with Rheinmetall, Porsche, MAN, Messerschmitt, Blom-Voss, all these people just running around in circles trying to compete with each other instead of doing shit, and all the while having peacetime construction and build quality and standards and everything like that all the way through. And by the time they got themselves organized, Russia and USA had joined the chat, and like that was
They joined the chat.
They joined the chat. There was no winning that, right? But sort of again, I've gone on a tangent like I always do. The point is, when you wind it all the way back, that whole section of the war is usually forgot about. They don't talk about the big historical figures. Like, if I say the name Bill Knudsen to you, do you know who that is?
I'm very bad with names, to be frank, but no.
Okay. If I say that to any average person, 9 times out of 10, they're going to say no. Why that man does not have a statue in every US city, I don't know, because that man was the guy who was chief organizer on operation officer for General Motors during World War II. Him, along with the guy who ran Kaiser Shipyards, right? Those two dudes are single-handedly responsible for the United States winning World War II. Yeah, no one knows about them at all. Because Bill Knudsen was the guy who ran GM, but he also designed the first sort of production line template and machine tooling setup for all of the other factories that would help during the war. He was the guy who was in charge of organizing machine tools, right?
Okay.
So he would set up. So the massive American production numbers that you would see during World War II, he was the guy who got the ball rolling on that. Likewise, Kaiser Shipyards were the guys who worked with the British mission who came over, and they are responsible for the Liberty ship. And this is what I keep telling people. Like, the most important weapon of World War II wasn't the Tiger tank, wasn't the Mustang, it wasn't the Me-262 jet, it wasn't the T-34, it wasn't even the M1 Garand. What it was the General Motors Deuce and a Half truck, the C-47 Skytrain, and the Liberty ship. These 3 things are what won World War II. Forget everything else.
Logistics were something that the U.S. really cared about, and that our enemies thought was unglorified, so to speak, I feel like.
Yeah.
And that played into our advantage.
To quote Clausewitz, amateur study tactics, professional study logistics.
German.
Clausewitz is very much the same way. Yep. Which is
Yeah,
kind of ironic when you think, because the Germans took logistics and fucked that concept in the ass so hard. Like a German coined that term, yet German logistics of World War II were... Oh,
Yeah,
God.
I feel like, logistics are... Hungry soldiers don't fight very well.
No. No, they do not. Every general who's forgotten logistics, everybody who forgets logistics. And so the logistical part of World War II is by far, in a weird way, the most interesting one. But it's not the one that gets the clicks. The battles get the clicks. So
Yeah, and so if you look at like YouTube historians, obviously you have a bias there. And let's not kid. We talk about clicks now because we're all YouTubers, but like back 50 years ago or whatever, it was book sales, right? So it's the same concept. When you have to fund your historical research based on like views or book purchases or whatever, if you got to fund it that way, then you're going to obviously have a bias towards things that get that funded.
If you go back and watch my stuff,
That's my PvP alarm, by the way.
Oh, hell yeah. If you go back and watch some of my stuff better, you'll see me trying to sneak it into all of my videos. I keep trying to, hey, so the logistics side of this was really cool. Like, please, like, pay attention to the logistics. Because logistics is like, it sounds boring, but like, it's some of the most interesting shit. Like,
no, it definitely can be boring.
Oh,
I'm not saying it's not important, but I mean, things that are boring can be important. But there are certain parts of logistics that are very boring.
So, which then ties us right back to the start of the whole tangent, which is that one of the best ways.
There was a start to this tangent.
Yeah, which is right back to why I use the waifus from Azur Lane and the waifus from Girls and Panzer to contextualize the events in the story, is because it then allows you to humanize the mechanical. It allows you to it allows people to identify not with. It allows people to directly identify with.
Oh, see, you should say that.
What's
By the
happening.
way, I just saw your comment come in. You don't have to be in the text channel the whole time.
Because he can't talk. He's underground. He's
Okay, sounds good.
But like that's the thing. Like if you get people to empathize, with the actual events, like getting people to identify and empathize with an event and with certain things is far more effective than just telling them about it. At least in my experience, I've had people tell me I've made them cry in my videos. So like,
That should be a quote.
Yeah.
Animarchy makes his fans cry.
I do make my fans cry, and I enjoy doing it too.
I don't think anyone's told me that I've made them cry in the comments, but you know.
Not your content. Not your
You
kind
know,
of content.
maybe I did make them cry when they had to come up against all of my New jerseys.
Man, like I'm talking about the high level meta shit. Like if I open up my Azur Lane right now, like if I open it up right now and look at like the ships I have, like I don't have anything near a meta build. I have literally just the boats I like. Actually, you
What's
know
your
what?
favorite boat? What's your favorite boat?
Ooh. Again, are we talking from a gameplay sense, or are we talking from just a purely off the top of my head?
I would
Like-
say Azur Lane boat, so related to like the character in Azur Lane, not just like a historical boat.
The character in Azur Lane?
Yeah.
It's Hood,
Easily.
innit?
HMS Hood. Without a shadow of a doubt.
It is.
You like
HMS
that,
Hood.
Jordan?
No. Mine actually like it's illustrious, but it's because of my gramps or grandpa, because he liked the 1978 illustrious that got scrapped in 2000 and something. He was really sad about that, and he didn't stop talking about it. So I was like, you know what? I remember hearing illustrious, so I'll just simp for this character. And turns
And that's
out,
the
turns
only
out,
reason you simp for illustrious, right?
no.
only-
Her voice actor is Amami Yostar, which is my favorite voice actor, and that was those are the two only reasons why.
Only
I
two
simp.
reasons. There's only
There's
two
no-
reasons you simp
no,
for
no,
illustrious.
no, none of those. But, massive honkers in it.
I was waiting for him to pick up on that joke, and I was like, "Yeah, there's two reasons you."
There's
you
none of
for
that.
illustrious.
None of that.
There's two very big reasons you should sit for illustrious.
Because if you know the what's the correct word, standards for a woman, for me, you'd be like, why the fuck would you look like illustrious? It's a bit weird, if that makes sense, because illustrious compared to my standards on women, on how they should look, is completely different.
Yeah, it's weird for me because because you look at it, what like my focus is on Azur Lane, like I come in on the historical side, right? But when I think about it, of all the ships I've covered in the Azur Lane series thus far, and I haven't covered Hood yet, but there's a reason why I haven't covered Hood. Historically, I don't like Hood as a ship historically very much. Like, I don't like it very much as a design. I don't like the ship itself, right?
Mhm.
And again, it's kind of why I keep sort of dunking on that guy who keeps asking for Belfast in my comments. It's for the same reason. Hood does a world tour. She's the face of the Empire. She does lots of cool things, but she doesn't, like, aside from shooting Frenchmen, which is always based, she doesn't do very much, right?
Did you just say shooting Frenchman is based? Gosh.
But
Sorry to
yeah,
my
Merc-
French fans.
Yeah. Who
I
has
want to look
French
this up.
fans?
How many French people watch my crap now?
I'm sorry, like I can't help it. Like I have a dig at the French whenever I can. But yeah, she shells Mers El Kabir.
According
Which is-
to my analytics, 46,000 French people.
Actually,
God.
can I check what? Like, hang on.
On the meantime, we could ask the question of
No, but let me finish my thing. What I was saying was, Hood goes out, shells Melzer Kabir, goes back, was supposed to get a refit. Bismarck turns up, she sails out and dies. Right? That's it. Prior to that, she just goes on world tours and sets speed records. Right? Belfast, similar thing. She goes out, does a few patrols, hits a mine, gets stuck, comes back out, fights Scharnhorst once, shells the beaches of Normandy, gets transferred to Far Eastern Fleet, and then that's it. Right?
That's a little bit more
And then-
exciting.
And then becomes a museum. Right?
That's true.
This is up against like, you know, Enterprise or Bismarck or Akagi or like, you know, New Jersey even, right? It's up against all these crazy ships who don't, like USS Laffey, for example, right? Like USS
Right.
Laffey the first charges Hiei into bayonet range, and then the second one fights the entire kamikaze force.
Yeah, the
attacking it.
second one, I've been on the second one. That's a crazy one.
So like when I talk about like the ships from Azur Lane, like who are my favorites, it's like as a character, it's easily Hood. For the same reason, my main girl from Girls on Panzer is Darjeeling, because
Wait, so all of you guys, I just realized your favorite characters are all British. All three of you.
yeah, but I mean, technically, all three of us has some UK like heritage on us.
I mean, yeah, that and my stereotype is my friends never shut up about when they ask what your type is. You know, what's your type of girl? Or like my type is officially designated women I can't afford. And Hood is definitely a woman I can't afford. She is way too classy for the likes of me. But like she's these days though she's tied with Enterprise really for the same reason. But the other reason is actually it's the same as Dojin's reason. Yui Ishikawa is my favorite voice actress. She's my hero, and she voices Enterprise. She also voices 2B from Nier Automata, and she voices Mikasa. And of course, she voices my favorite anime of all time, Violet Evergarden. So, I'm biased towards Yui.
So for Azur Lane Meta, why do you have Amagi as like your profile picture?
Oh boy.
Okay, so
is
this
there
is gonna
any-
sound. So when I was trying to think, so by the way, I like Amagi. She's
Yes,
definitely
we
like
know that.
one of the ship girls that I like. A lot of people think that she's my necessarily favorite. I don't necessarily pick like a definitive favorite, but I would say she's like in the top 5. But the real reason that I ended up picking her was because of the combination of her personality and the way that she's played in the game is very similar to I guess the first thing is she's meta related. At the time she was like a meta ship. She was one of the ships that you pretty much had to play in PvP. And she was very powerful. And the other thing is she's a very like at the time most ships had like, okay, here's a barrage, here's a very simple skill, etc. Like think about Enterprise being one of the most powerful ships. It's like a really short one skill. That's all she has. Hood was really
Yes.
popular back then too, and her skill is just a reload buff. And Amagi had like multiple skills. All of them had like lines of text. And so there's a lot going on with that. Number 2, like she is PvP competitive at the time. And also like a lot of her character goes with basically being a tactician. and thinking about like what is the best strategy going forward, and that's kind of her character. So I think all three of those kind of embodied what I was trying to do with the channel, which is, be strategic about what are we doing for like what are the best PvP ships and things like that. So I think that was part of it. I mean, a lot of part of it is I do like her, but she wasn't even my first oath. She was actually my second oath on my
Ooh.
account.
Who was your
Um,
first?
Yukikaze. Yukikaze was.
Oh no,
Yuki Kaze. Wow.
Yukikaze.
The reason the reason Yukikaze was my first oath was because at the time I was a free-to-play player and I didn't know how easy it was going to be to get rings in the future. And I said, which ship is going to live the longest PvP-wise? And I was like, Yukikaze is so far ahead of every other ship. It's very unlikely she's going to be power crept in the near future, which was true because she was like a meta ship for like a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
But that was actually the reason she got oath first. Not because like, oh, I love Yukikaze. Although she's like fine. Her oath skin is very nice looking, but it was totally 100% like which ship is not going to get power crept. And that as quickly. They're all going to get power crept at some point, but which one is going to be the longest? And I assessed it was going to be Yukikaze. Which I think was largely a pretty good assessment. I don't know how many ships from the first 3 to 6 months of the game are still around in the meta. Like maybe Juneau, but that doesn't even count. You don't even want her oathed. Like you want her to die quicker. So
stop Juneau abuse. Stop it. Stop abusing her.
I actually don't even use Juneau that much anymore. Because Anchorage is just so strong.
Oh yes. As you go face him as well. Oh god.
But yeah, so anyway, Amagi was kind of this perfect. There's not like a one reason to pick her, but it was like this perfect. She's like a ship I really enjoy. Yeah, because also remember when I started, I didn't start at the beginning of the game. I started much later than most people that are like current content creators. So I started on like the last like kind of week of her event. So I had no cubes built up or whatever. And I just pulled randomly and happened to get her like on the last kind of day of the event, basically.
It was fate.
And so I was like, looking back on it, I was like, the chances I would have got her were actually pretty low because I did like 20 pulls. I mean, it was a new player. I had not a lot of pulls. Chances I got her was very impressive, and for me to be able to keep her. And then she literally was the reason I propelled to be number one. Like if I didn't get Amagi, it would have been very difficult for me to actually get Admiral of the Navy, when I did as a free player. Fortunately, I also got Yukikaze and Nagato, which were both very important to that. But I don't know. It ended up being just like a perfect storm of, I like her. She kind of was fate. She also embodies the kind of route that I want the channel to take.
Yeah. And another question, have you followed the Azur Lane YouTube scenes lately, or the past 6 months?
I always like to search Azur Lane in the YouTube search bar and just kind of get a sense of what comes up. And, if something shows up there, I'll usually look at it. So sometimes it will be like a creator from a different scene that happens to do an Azur Lane video, and it like a World of Warship creator that makes a Azur Lane YouTube video and something like that. Sometimes it will be brand new creator I've never heard of that joined the scene and whatnot. And oftentimes it will be like people that I've worked with before, like Hawk or something like that. So I always like to do that. Now I don't really, like I'd say, follow anybody to the point where I'm like looking at every upload they do. But I do like to maybe once a week or so type in Azur Lane in the search bar and see like what's going on. What is YouTube saying the Azur Lane videos of the week are, basically.
Yeah. So
it's always good when I'm at the top of those searches.
Yeah. But what are your thoughts on, because the Azur Lane official Discord server, they despise us a lot, especially the guides videos, calling them misleading and outdated. Like, what are your thoughts on the Azur Lane guide videos?
Yeah, so I'll say a couple things. I think I've definitely talked to some people who have said that because I want to know and get better and see what I can do to get better. And a lot of them, when I directly like, oh, I make guides. Why do you think my video sucks? Like, how can I make better? Most of them are like, well, I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about other people. Your videos are like generally okay. And I was like, okay, that's a very side compliment or not, but so I don't get like a ton of hate on mine, so to speak, but I do know that some people are like, oh, those guide videos aren't help. And I will say this. The thing about making guides is it takes a lot of things to get, like, you have to do the research, you have to write the scripts, you got to do the editing. It takes a lot of work to make them. Of course, we're all human. We can make mistakes. And of course, if I ever make a mistake and I catch it, I always like to write it in a comment and pin that comment. Like, I'm not immune from mistakes, but I always like to try and make my corrections, like pinning a comment on my YouTube video just to make sure, like, hey, you know, sometimes I make mistakes, especially in data mine videos where it's like we're literally looking at before the game comes out. There are mistakes that happen. Most of the
data
time,
mines,
the
data mines are sometimes just not quite spot on.
Okay,
yeah, I'm actually very proud of our data mines because most of the time what happens is the game comes out and people are like, oh, the skill says it does this. And when we go into it, we're like, well, it actually performs like this on the back end server, and Yostar's translation team got it wrong, which makes me feel really proud. But that's usually what happens. But anyway, going back to the guide thing is it takes a lot of work to make guides. And when you make a guide, you put it out. And it can be wrong and whatever. I try to be as most accurate as possible. If there is a wrong, I obviously try to say that in a comment or something like that. But the other thing is a lot of these guides are meant to be made evergreen and so to speak. Like, we make this guide and you're supposed to stay out there. But like Azur Lane's getting updates every 2 weeks.
Yes.
So like a lot of these guides get outdated. Like, I've made videos that get outdated by an update like 2 or 3 days later. The video I like to comment on this is I made a video one time titled like the missing ships or the forgotten ships of Azur Lane, just making ships that like they haven't had a rerun in a long time, or like they made an appearance somewhere but they never like got into the game, like Tone or whatever. And I basically made that video, and within like, I always like to joke that like intern couldn't watch that video and said, okay, these are the ships that have to be the next event, because like almost all the ships on there except for like Tone and Sovietskaya Soyuz, I think, other than those two, all of them basically got an event or a rerun within the next like 2 months, like all of them. And I was like, okay, so that video, if you go watch that, is pretty lackluster. It doesn't like have much because and of course so there are videos like that get outdated very quickly just by chance when you have a game that is getting updated constantly. And so there are parts of me that are like, sometimes those videos should maybe be taken down. There are other parts of me that like, some of this content is still good as long as you view it in a sense that like, if you take into consideration the time that the video was posted, or even some degrees, you can be working on a video for 3 weeks before the video gets posted. So like, even before that to some degree.
Have you done that?
Have I done what? Sorry.
Have you like planned or editing or done a video that takes 3 weeks and uploaded it to YouTube?
Oh, I've had a video where I planned it for a month, and then when it got done, like I got the collab, I got the script, I got the research, I did the editing. It took a month. And then when I went to upload it, it was out of date and I scrapped it, and that video does not exist on the internet. No one has ever seen it except me.
Oh God.
There are videos like that happen. Yeah.
Oh God.
That was a very sad day.
No, I've had the same thing happen. Me and a mate and a couple mates got together and did this Sniper Elite video, and it was a Q&A video. And it was a really good Q&A. Everything went really well. Like, it was really fun. The banter was great. Everything was great. And then I checked the OBS recording, the gameplay footage had corrupted in the OBS recording, and so it had a frame rate of like 13 to 14.
I have a story very similar to this. I can tell this one because this one wasn't an outdated one, but I actually had a friend. She came and we played basically all of Azur Lane Crosswaves together with commentary, me and her. And I thought it was really fun. And the video card, because we were playing it on the PlayStation rather than on something like that. So the video recording card was different than what I've normally used, and it just got corrupted and couldn't use any of it. And it like you can't like fake. We can't go back and like fake. I mean, we could, but like we didn't want to go back and like fake the commentary. Like we'd already played through the game. We already knew it was coming. There wasn't any spoilers. Like we also had been playing for hours. And she, like, I was like, all right, well, that just got scrapped. Never mind. So yeah, we don't have anything for Azur Lane Crosswaves.
But the thing is, Azur Lane Crosswave was just it's not that great. So
No, I think that game was a bust as well. So part of it was if I really loved that game, I might have like I wouldn't have ever faked like my reactions to it, I don't think, but I would have probably done something else related to Crosswaves. I would have made a different type of video to replace that one. But I really didn't enjoy playing it. I played it with her for hours, and I was like, isn't that fun? Like,
because I played it, but I didn't understand what was going on. But hey, at least Shimakaze was there. That was kind of nice.
yeah, now Shimakaze is like in the main game, so now there's no reason to play Crosswaves.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want season 2 of the anime, man.
You want what? Sorry.
I like the anime. I'm one of the weird guys who came into Azur Lane from the anime. Like seriously.
There's a lot of people that came into Azur Lane from the anime. I've noticed actually. Like, I know that anime gets a lot of shit on it because in terms of like its technical prowess, it certainly could be better. But like, as a fanboy of the game, it's kind of nice to be like, ooh, there's that ship that I like. Freaking
let's go,
dude.
San Diego.
I don't know.
Yeah, man.
I feel like Slow Ahead was technically better in terms of like the way that they did it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as the original, if that makes sense.
No. You see, Oshi would agree with them, but he can't because he's just can't speak. There's some angry typing.
Yeah, I don't know. I just the when I watched the first one, I had fun watching it, even though like there were just certain things that were really bad about it. But I enjoyed it. And then Slow Ahead, I'm like, oh, they fixed that. And then it was like, I don't
just
really need to watch Prince Eugen like make chocolate. Like that's not what I want to do with my free time. I'm sorry.
Speak for your fucking self. That was the best scene in Slow Ahead. I don't know.
It was 8. One episode on Slow Ahead was like 8 minutes, so it didn't take that much time.
No, but yeah, I'm gonna get some hate for that comment. I feel like.
Dude, look, I actually really enjoyed Slow Ahead in a lot of ways, mainly because of the sort of more slice of lifey aspects of it. Like it was cool just seeing them all hanging out in a weird way. It was just kind of fun about that.
Yeah, see, I'm not a slice of life guy so much.
Yeah, I get it.
Slice of life, I can go live my life if I want slice of life.
Yeah,
I'm trying to go into a different universe over here.
I mean, that's the weird thing about the actual anime. The plot was all right. It wasn't
bad, great. No, it wasn't great. But it did exist at least.
What was really good about it? What was really good about it though is like I like all of the characters, like you said, getting their screen time. They're getting their screen time.
Bath scene.
Oh, the bath scene's great, I guess, but if you wanna be degenerate.
It's bro.
Not surprised Doujingod was happy with the bath scene.
Bro, illustrious.
No, I just sort of think that. Oh God.
What is wrong with this man?
No,
maybe it's a good thing he can't talk.
It's a good thing you can't talk right now, man. God damn, OC, degeneracy. No, I just think that that whole sort of show was an excuse for me to see all of the characters like animated and hanging out and having a good time. And Slow Ahead does that too. One thing I have wrong with Slow Ahead is that
The art style are
the
similar.
proportions of some of the characters were thrown way out of whack for the sake of the fan service, which I get. The only problem is, yes, like Bismarck, OC, thank you. But yes, but the whole point of like, if you're gonna do that with characters, like if you're gonna overly spicify them, for lack of a better term, because don't want daddy
That's a
YouTube
new word
come
for
after us.
me. Spicify.
Spicify or spice up if you like, because we need to avoid the dreaded YouTube hammer of death. Like if you're gonna do that to a character, you at least want the art style of the original anime, of the anime that you did before, because then that's more conducive to spicy content. Whereas Slow Ahead is a very sort of almost Lucky Star-ish like cartoon slice of life gag manga series, right? Which doesn't work when you're trying to do fan service. It just doesn't work. Like it doesn't. Not Jozu, not decidedly unpog.
I am excited for Queen's Orders though. I will give that one a shot, but if it's not hitting, it's gonna be dropped.
You see, this is the thing. The Royal Navy Maid Corps are, in my opinion, the best waifus alongside the main ones.
I stay away from the British faction as much as possible.
Nah, bro.
Okay.
All right.
Other than the fact that this meta looks a little bit like Hood, I feel like I stay away from the British faction.
So the question is then, what is your like actual like favorite waifu? Is it Amagi or is it somebody else?
I always like to answer this question with like a top 5 because I don't have a particular favorite Azur Lane
Well,
character.
that's what we're here for. Hit us with the top 5, Chief.
All right, we'll hit you with the top 5. Well, Amagi, we've already said, is in the top 5. That's undeniable. I think Aquila is definitely also undeniable in the top 5.
Okay.
I think Bunker Hill hits the top 5 as well.
Okay.
And then after that, it gets a little bit tricky. I think Udachi is probably also in the top 5.
You know what? That's fair. That's fair.
I will say this. I can't not put her in the top 5 because this would be lying. So when I start a game, my philosophy, especially the game like this, is I will not pay money for the game until I've decided that it's not being like an addictive, predatory type of game. So I usually give myself a goal and I say, all right, I'm going to be free to play until I do something. And then once I do something, and if I enjoy it and I feel like not pressured to pay, then I might indulge. You know what I mean? And so when I found the game Azur Lane, I looked through all the characters and I said, which one would be the one that I would be interested in? And at this point, this was like really early in the game because when I found Azur Lane, I didn't actually download and start playing the game for quite a while until afterward, like a couple weeks later. So at the time, the character that I found was Udachi, and I said, this character I actually like, or she looks cool, so I'm gonna play the game. I'm going to give it a shot until I get Udachi. And once I get Udachi, I'll make the decision of whether I want to continue playing or whether I want to drop it. And so it feels kind of unfair to not put her in the top 5 because she was literally my favorite when the game like first got introduced to me, which like Yukikaze and Amagi and Nagato weren't even in the game yet at that time because it was very early. So I would say she has to be in the top 5. And then for the 5th one, a lot of choices here. I think Yukikaze has to go there just because she was my first oath. So my top 5 would probably be Amagi, Aquila, Bunker Hill, Udachi, and Yukikaze.
Okay, so is there a ship that you really, really despise or hate? Just throwing out there.
Huh. Well, I mean, given the ship that has died the most under my ranks is Juneau.
Oh no.
No, I don't actually despise her, but there was a point in time where I was like, I can't get past this EX mode. You know what? Screw it. I'm just gonna throw Juneau in here and it'll be fine. And it worked first time. Actually that even happened for when I was doing like World 13? I think it was World 13 when I first started. I was like no, it was World 12. When I was starting World 12, I was still a little bit newer. So I was struggling with it. I was like, you know what, we'll just throw Juneau in here. Just die early, fix my mob fleet. It'll be fine. So Juneau definitely takes the most L's in my dock. Not even a question. In terms of, I don't know who I despise. I don't have a really despise sort of thing. I think I despise all non-real ships, like collab ships.
Okay.
Or
Oh.
like the meta versions of ships. I really like ships that are related to a historical ship. Now, they don't have to be a ship that was made. It can be a ship that was like they laid the foundation of was it the Soviet Skyorossia. Like she wasn't ever built, but like she was planned and like they laid her down and things like that. I'm okay with that, but like ships that are complete, like Kazuno AI, that one, like that ship, I despise that one. That should not be a ship. I don't like collab ships. I understand the need for collabs. They bring in new players. They can bring in some fun events. But I do not want to ever feel like I need to use them. And if any collab ship becomes meta competitive, I'm going to be very upset.
I like
Chisei was very close to doing that.
Like Rika.
Very close.
Isn't Rika like the Gridman girl? Rika Takarada.
Yeah, Rika's not really that good though. Like she's like unique because she can put 5 rainbow dildos on her, but like she's not that good. The best collab ship is by far Chisei. She's very close to being like meta. So she's probably the one.
I hate to admit the fact that if there was a HoloLive EN collab, I'd be kind of interested.
So here's the thing. I would be interested, but I would hope all the ships suck ass. Okay? Like, I hope they're terrible, trash ships. Like, sure, do a collab, bring some cool, like, music items that come in, love it, make some funny event with some memes, love it, bring some players in, love it, and then make the ships absolute garbage trash. That's...
So that leads on to the next question. Doujingod, top 5.
Top 5? Alright. No, actually, I might do in a particular order. So obviously, number 1, illustrious. Number 2, probably Minneapolis.
Minneapolis, interesting.
Yeah. Number 3. Shit.
I have a question, if you don't mind me interjecting.
Yeah, go on.
Do you like Minneapolis's original art, or do you like her like more recent version art of her?
More recent, as in like her wedding skin.
Yeah, like the wedding skin or the anime version of her or whatever.
Honestly, it doesn't. I don't mind. I if I had to choose one, I probably prefer the slower head one.
Okay.
But back to the top 5. So we have illustrious, Minneapolis, and I'd probably say Indomitable. I hate her. I mean, I like her, but if you take in like the real life stuff she's done, I hate her. Then gotta think. Hold on. I know there's some AVP. Fourth, AVP. And fifth, I'm not gonna lie, it might be either Baltimore Archerfish.
Archerfish. Interesting. We got
Yeah.
finally a sub on here.
Yeah, the thing is, I've been waiting for so long for there to be a proper submarine gameplay, because we can't use them for more than twice a week. I don't hate subs. I hate that we don't have gameplay for subs. That's the biggest problem.
I think the thing about subs is if we did have gameplay for them, it would be really hard because like most players don't have a good way to level them or have them or like. I mean, I have pretty much all of the subs. I have all the good ones, and I have like. I'm like pretty leveled. I have like a full U-boat 125 whatever setup.
I don't use U-boats.
Yeah, I mean, like, I also have Archerfish and I-13 and Albacore all maxed, and then I'm going to be maxing out Leonardo da Vinci. So, like, I'll have them, but I just feel like it'd be unfair for a lot of other people who are like, I have like 2 subs, they're both purple, and they're like level 70.
So that's my top 5. And if I had to answer one of my questions earlier, a ship called that I despise or hate is probably Kent.
Oh, yeah, that's always a good one.
Yeah.
Mainly because, obviously, number 1, she always comes up in building. But number 2, because of FIFA 20. Jesus Christ. I'm so... like, Kent is a football player that is in FIFA that got a cool special card in FIFA 20, and that card must have broken at least 1,000 controllers. That's the reason why I hate Kent.
Alrighty.
Yeah, that's a pretty.
You know
So
Ryan
I don't
Kent?
know.
Animarchy. You know Ryan Kent?
Yeah, I know Ryan Kent.
So what's yours? Your top 5 anymore? Because we only know that you like who.
Okay, so HMS Hood is number 1.
Yeah.
Number 2, USS Enterprise.
Yeah.
Then it gets a bit weird. Number
gotcha.
3 is HMS Sheffield.
Okay.
So you like that
Sheffield.
one scene?
It's more the fact that in the lore, like, because I when I do like most of my expanded universe stuff, like when I get into a franchise or a series, I do like I don't so much focus on the core of it. I go onto the lore side of things. Again, history nerd influence coming out there, which is why I have got like every single Horus Heresy novel from 40k, but I don't play the tabletop, right? So it's sort of like the same thing. And the great thing is Sheffy is one of my favorite characters because like Little Bell and Little Enterprise, Sheffy's always in charge of like the younger characters, right? And yet in universe, Sheffy is also the baddest bitch out of everyone. She's like secret agent woman. She's like she'll put 3 rounds into your head from her sidearm and then walk past you and shoot you again just to make sure. All the while scowling at you, calling you trash, right? And she is the baddest bitch. Like in the anime
that's
too.
What Animarchy likes.
you see her in the anime as well. You see her in the anime. She's of all the characters, even though Enterprise is more powerful, even though Belfast is great, Sheffy is the baddest bitch. She faces down Kaga and Akagi in 1-to-1 combat at the same time, and then goes out and fights the Atago and Takao as well, right? And like, you know, so like she's a complete badass, yet at the same time in the other shit she's doing in the lore of the series, she's in charge of all the younger ships. She's in charge of the destroyers and she's in charge of the little ships, right?
Yeah.
Which is like really great because she is the deadliest, coldest, most hardcore motherfucker, and yet at the same time she has the most love in her heart in a weird way. And I love her for that.
I always thought her
she's great.
spy episode was pretty funny.
Yeah, like that's what I mean. She's bad to the bone, but like she's also the softest at heart in a weird way, and I really like that about her as a character. So she's my number 3.
Okay.
Number 4 and 5 is sort of like interchangeable. Number 4, I'm gonna be honest, Zuikaku.
Again. Oh.
Okay.
Zuikaku.
Her racetrack skin is top notch.
It is.
I adore Zuikaku. I think as a character, she's great. Number 5 is where it gets a bit weird.
Oh no.
Because everyone knows all the tangents I go on, all the yelling. And number 5 is actually a tie between 2 characters. For similar reasons. Again, it's a tie between Belfast and Frederick the Great. Frederick the Grocer. It's number 5 is a tie between Belfast and FDR. FDJ rather. Because I need someone to take care of me. I'm a mess.
So
No,
There's that
also,
take.
yeah. There's that. Like that's there. And of course, like every Azur Lane fan, there's like a constant war in your head for who, like, because you've got your favorites, and then there's a constant war in your head on who should be admitted to the favorite section.
Who should be admitted?
Who should be admitted to the
How many
favorite?
oaths do you have? How many oaths do you have?
I have 3.
Only
I
3.
have-
Wow, very
I have
modest.
3. I have
I-
3. I have. It's illustrious.
yes. My G.
Not even one of your top 5.
Exactly, right? I oath illustrious because she, like, of all the characters in my fleet, she's been holding down the fort for me. Like that if she was my meta oath, if we were to use the term, great, there you go. You see you've got yourself an official term, right? She was my meta oath.
That's basically all of my oaths. Most
Yeah,
of them.
because she's a meta oath. Because like her shield ability plus the amount of damage she can put out, like I was like, yo, and her oath skin is great, right?
Yes.
My
G.
there's Hood,
Okay.
obviously.
Yes.
favorite.
She was
Makes sense.
She was my waifu oath, and then again, for all my talking shit, the other one is also a meta oath, which is Turpitz.
Your meta oaths are very questionable.
Yeah, because I don't do PvP, I do PvE.
They're
And
still
Turpitz
questionable
is-
for PvE.
Dude, Turpitz fucking hits like a truck, dude. Because I don't
You
because
tried New Jersey?
I'm very heavy on carriers. I'm very heavy on carriers, and also
Yes.
I don't drop a lot of money, and I don't drop a lot of money, and I don't grind a lot, right? Which means
So who's going to be your oath that you got your free oath for the anniversary? Do you have that planned out at least?
Put it on
yes,
Bell. Put it on
yes,
Bell.
I no.
Unicorn. Unicorn.
My oath for anniversary is easy. My oath for anniversary is Enterprise. Duh.
Oh, okay. That's
The ironic part about this is out of all the meta oaths that you did, Enterprise is probably the most meta ship out of them.
Yeah, and here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. You want to know what's really fucked up? After all of these things, all of my favorites and stuff are based on the character traits, and like some of them are like, you know, like even like none of my top 5 ships is pure horny posting, right? Like there's a little element of it, but none of them are pure horny posting. It's their characterization in the anime and their historical counterparts.
I don't know. The way you
It's
said
sort
mommy after FDG,
I will say yeah, but at the same time, like her character in like the EU stuff and the events, like I really like her sort of commanding presence, and Belfast as well. The Belfast Enterprise dynamic is my favorite part of the anime, right? So it's one of those things, right? But like if we're talking pure horny posting, like I hate to admit it because of all the trash talking I was doing earlier, but Jean Bart for real. Jean Bart for real. For real. Jean Bart hits different, man. She hit diff. Like, I'm telling you, right?
Okay.
In terms of like ships with raw appeal, Ships with raw appeal, Jean Bart is the way to go, man. Like for real.
All right then.
I almost bought that figure. I almost did
So
for that sole purpose.
So Doujingod, how many O's do you have?
I hold on. I think I have 15. Alright, let's start with the questionable ones to the meta ones, which there aren't many because I don't really care. I mean, I made quite fine. Well, 14. I'm stuck at 14.3. I hate that map so much.
Yeah,
Anyways,
that map's not fun. I'm glad I don't have to be back there.
So, at first we have Casino. Then we move to Marbleheads. Then we have Minneapolis, Belfast, Queen Elizabeth, Illustrious, Yukikaze, Nagato, Taiho, FDG, Pamiat, Shimakaze, and Essex.
Okay.
I don't know how many that was.
Well, that's a good chunk.
Yeah. Marblehead, I had to. I made a Azur Lane Hunger Games, but the winner of the Hunger Games gets married. So Marblehead won that. That
Wait,
was
how did she
fourth.
win the Hunger Games? This sounds interesting.
So yeah, I made a video of this simulation website called Hunger Games. I just put in 23 characters, made them battle for Promise Ring, and Marblehead won with 4 kills.
Wait, how did the kills go? I'm sorry.
The kills go by like it says a paragraph like Marblehead stabs Belfast in the back, or New Jersey jumps off a cliff committing a suicide, like that.
Oh,
It's a big raw. I mean, you can still go watch it. It's actually I'd say one of my more entertaining videos. And a lot of people have asked for a part 2, which is in the works.
okay.
But this time instead of...
Marblehead won, being like the last survivor.
Yes, she won.
You know, that
being the
kind of
last
seems on brand, to be frank.
Yeah, so that's that.
Cool.
God damn. I guess like we're kind of at like, how long have we been going now? We've gone 2 hours. Holy
Yeah,
shit.
we have.
I'm not envious of Doujingod's editing.
Yeah, man, he's gonna
No, it's completely fine. I've got this. Plus, I've had a little chat with OC. He should be completely fine with editing it, right?
OC's gonna be editing it?
I sure do hope. Oh, apparently he's not. But one last question before we probably should end this thing is that, how long do you think Azur Lane will last?
Ooh. Well, I feel like the sentiment from a lot of the community is that Azur Lane will last as long as they don't release Yamato. Like whenever they release her will be the death sentence, and now that everyone's like, oh no. I don't know. There's certainly this year I feel like they've seen less new players and less money than they did last year. That's always
their marketing for Azur Lane isn't the best compared to Arknights.
I feel like with like new games, I feel like they're starting to Yostar they got other IPs, and now we have new things in the work like Azure Welkin and all those different things. So I do think there is going to be a little less of a marketing push, which means that there's going to be less newer players. But I also don't think that Azure Lane is really having a flight risk. Like a lot of games need to keep up marketing to stay alive because players are, they burn out really quickly and they're on rotation. Like they literally come in, they leave, and you have to keep getting new players. But I feel like Azur Lane has a very slow leakage. So, like a lot of people will play for a long time, and even if they do quit, they'll come back after a little while, even without some marketing. So I do think that we have a loyal fan base, and like anytime that you have a loyal fan base, a game can survive. I mean, you can look at certain games like Mabinogi that are like on 2 decades because they have a loyal fan base. It's not growing. No one's joining that game really. But like they still have enough money to keep the servers up, so why not? So I think Azur Lane could go for a very, very long time if they want to. I honestly think the biggest risk they run is running into political trouble more than anything. I don't know. They have plenty of ships to still go. I think they could literally get 2 more years worth of ship content without struggling. If you're trying to look like 5-10 years out from now, that's when I think that they might struggle and might have to start expanding to World War I or Cold War ships if they want to keep going. But I think Azur Lane's in a pretty safe spot because I think that Yostar and Manjuu still have very good reputations. I think they can screw that in one go. Like reputations
they
are
do.
always something you can blow up really quickly.
They can.
Also, there's the elephant in the room. Which is, market forces outside of Azur Lane's control, which is, of course, the fact that Yostar and Azur Lane are a Chinese company.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was saying the political aspect is probably their highest short-term risk because I also
shit
think
goes down and
because they're kind of cracking down on games over there. But it sounds like most of that was last year. Like the highest risk of that was last year, and it sounds like we might have gotten through, so to speak. The worst part, I mean, those sort of things can change on a dime. You never know, but I'm not too worried about that. I mean,
all major
corporations.
are.
Yeah, a lot of those. Let's just say this: they've moved They moved there from Shanghai to Hong Kong, and then now they have an office in Tokyo. So they've kind of almost insulated themselves to some degree in that as well, probably with a purpose. But
all major Chinese companies, look, the fact that they're still going and they're still alive, like all major Chinese corporations, and Yostar is big, like especially with Arknights, Yostar is big.
Which is ironic because they were a little baby back when we started. Like they were like a little baby with like a little own office. Now they're the big boy.
Yostar, thanks to Azur Lane and Arknights, is now mega, especially in Japan, of course. And so as a result, like their main office, their main like market is Japan, and they are a massive and they are a massive company. They're raking in billions with a B, right? In yen, so like hundreds of millions of dollars, certainly, right?
Yeah,
and so it is a foregone conclusion that they have a representative from the CCP on their board. They have to. So I think the fact that, as you say, the game still exists and is still running is proof that Azur Lane, at least politically for the moment and economically at the moment, is safe. Like, I don't think
the CCP would love if Azur Lane can make money and then they can tax it. They aren't going to love if it starts affecting the political climate within the country. So that's why you see there are basically no censorship in Japan or the global, but there is censorship in China because they're like, well, we're not going to take profits over what we think is going to be harmful to our society. So you can't do that here. But like, you want to do that out abroad? Like, go ahead, rake in the money, and we'll take our tax cut.
Exactly. And
yeah,
it's why they're so bloody smart. It's irritating. It's irritating. It's like, as I say, at every situation, they're playing the game in hundreds of years, not tens, like all of the rest of us are. So like, they're big brain. But the point is, Azur Lane is.
So alive. I don't think I have much to concern about the game dying. Like, I'm not too worried about the servers like going down because they're not being profitable. I mean, I hope that comment doesn't come to bite me at some point, but I really am not too worried about it. Like I said, things can change all over the time, and but I'm not personally very scared of the servers like being shut down, in 2022 or anytime. But I do think that their focus on marketing budget is probably going to start lowering, and that means the growth that we've seen in the past probably is not going to be going on in the future as much. They're probably going to try to push other games that they're trying to get at. Because, of course, for them, they want to diversify. They don't want their whole business to be reliant on like one or two games. Like, they want other games to flourish so that they can kind of weather storms in different games and be diversified. So it makes sense that would happen. So, but we might not get like these huge expense budgets for like animes and marketing budgets and content creator collabs and all those things to try and get us to get all these new players and things like that, as we have in the past, because they've spent a ton. Like, that was their baby, that was their sole focus, and now they have different departments for all these different games.
In the end, I think my biggest shout for hope in terms of like where Azur Lane's at is the fact that my personal favorite franchise that has music spin-offs, game spin-offs, movie spin-offs, series spin-offs, anime main series, and so forth, and mangas for days. The World Witches franchise has been going since 2007, 2008, and it got a new anime this year.
So
right?
Here's the thing. I think Azur Lane could be like that because they have their cult following that you need to live past the burn and churn 2 or 3 years that most games live on.
Like the Azur Lane, like, look, I'm not as hardcore into the game as other people are, right? But I'm in the sort of sphere of the game, if that makes sense. And I've played through some of the...
You might not be like logging in daily, but like you are following, like, I don't know, you checked in the Azur Lane subreddit, or I don't know what you do, but like you're in that sphere,
I'm like, it is part of my job to be, so like I kind of am, right? So I'm like in and out. I'm looking around, but I was playing the game. I was playing the games, and I was playing the events, and I'm looking at the events, right? And the events do add into the lore of Azur Lane quite a bit, and of course, there's a lot of liberties taken here and there, and there's a lot of different things going on, right? But I was playing through a bunch of the events, and I'm like, with a group of clever writers, and some lore crafting dudes, and of course paying deference to the historical aspect it's all based on, like, from a lot of the events, you could actually cobble together a really decent anime franchise similar to the Fate franchise. Like, if you wanted to sort of like, I was looking at it and I was going, like,
sometimes history, sometimes real life writes the best plots and writes the best fiction, which is sometimes a bad thing, but also like sometimes you can get really good stories from history, or even from like real stories.
Again, my channel proves it. Like, I use the characters from Azur Lane to put a human face onto the events that are occurring on screen, and it makes the history itself come alive and be a bit more emotive and a bit more like impactful. And I'm sort of looking at it going, with all these like cool stories you've got, like the Turpitz event they had, the chessboard event. I can't remember what it's called. Like, that one was really good. And I'm like looking at that and I'm going, if you tied that in with a couple of the other events and built a sort of story around that, like, you could have a really decent anime, like a really good one.
My favorite events are definitely the ones that are tied to a real one. Like, I think the first Italian event was tied to like a total real one of my favorite events, and things like that. think they've kind of gotten away from that a little bit.
Playing the main game, it's literally just the war in the Pacific for the first bit of it, like literally the war in the Pacific, and I'm just playing it. I'm like,
Yeah, and then they hit midway, and then it becomes not that.
yeah, there's aliens and fucking
They hit midway, and then they're like, yeah, aliens.
yeah. You know what? It's that freaking novel series by that dude. I can't remember, like the Earth War novel series, where it's like, oh yeah, World War II's happening, and then all the Allies and the Nazis and everyone have to make peace, so they have to fight the lizard people from.
That's how you know 40% of your revenue stream comes from Japan.
Right, dude, like for real. Like, but yeah, I think that like Azur Lane, I think, and maybe again it's my bias, but I think Azur Lane could really benefit from, like, the Azur Lane anime was great as a sort of selling point for the game, right?
Oh, it got a lot of new players, even though it got very bad critical reviews. It got a lot of new players, so I would say it's a success.
It wasn't great, but like when you talk about the stories in the event stories are a bit cheesy, sure, but like the event stories have some really fun ones, like the magical fortress with Shimikaze and all that was kind of interesting, right? And then New Jersey's event was kind of cool too, but the again, as irritating as it is because a third of them are fucking paper ships. Like, the Iron Blood events are always fucking fire, right? And there's a ton of good ones that you can do. So, I think building up the anime franchise in a similar vein to Fate would probably be the best way of going about it, in my opinion. Anyway,
I think I would enjoy that the most. I'm not quite sure that would be their best financial decision going forward.
You say that, but Fate Grand Order with like Ishtar and all that went fucking wild when that anime dropped.
Yeah, but Yostar Pictures isn't at that level.
They could be.
Okay.
Brothers struggle. Because, like...
Isn't yet. Yeah.
Seriously, though. Because, like, I have seen...
If they want to go for it, I would be totally supportive of them. I would probably enjoy it. That's probably where I'd like to go. If I'm sitting in a Yostar board meeting, I just don't see how that pitch comes back to be what they need to get the green light.
Get some decent riders on board.
Yeah.
All you need is some decent riders, and all you need is... What they need to do is they need to embrace the actual lore of the show, I think, a bit more aggressively. Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard to get some decent writers when you can just do that and also make money.
Right, but like that's sort of where I'm at. I'm like, yeah, the situation is like, you look at the lore of the show, you've got Crimson Axis, you've got Azur Lane, you've got like the Sakura Empire, Ironblood, all the different factions. The anime wasn't very well written, but the show and the game is at its best when it shows the ship girls at war with each other.
Yeah, I would say this. I think if they're looking long term, if they're looking at like the long term, like what is their 10-year strategy, I think then you can start to say, oh yeah, that would be a good idea. But I do think it is a high risk to do that. It is a lot of money. It is a lot of effort, a lot of time that could be spent elsewhere for a very high risk thing that is going to be something that pays off in a decade from now. Whereas they have a lot of short-term, low-hanging fruit they can still collect, so to speak. So I would commend them if they take that long view and go with the high-risk thing, and I would support them in doing that. But I also, if I was a betting man, would bet they go the other way and take the low-hanging fruit.
Makes sense. Done it.
Yeah, but I think it's getting a bit too late. I think OC.
So you guys like, please stop
asleep.
talking so I can edit this video.
Bunch of, but I think it's let's ignore what OC is typing. But yeah, thank you, Azur Lane Meta, for coming to the
Yeah,
podcast.
thanks for having me. I had fun. Enjoyed talking with you guys. I'm excited to see what you come up with once you get this all edited. Not envious of you editing. I've been in your position before. And hopefully you'll invite me back at some point.
Yes,
absolutely. Host got cucked. The only reason the host got cucked is because you made me get up at 9 a.m. and you're having to not talk, OC.
Yeah, fucking twat. No, okay.
No.
Anyways,
I love that we've replaced one of our hosts with like
Meta.
the Virgin OC Gangster versus the Chad Meta. He just comes in and he's like, I have arrived.
This is my podcast, guys. I'm the
Look
host. Welcome these three
Look at me.
guests.
So he's typing. So anyways, my usual co-host OC, Animarchy, and God knows what my name is nowadays. Again, thank you, Azur Lane Meta, for coming to the podcast. And
All right, take care,
see
guys.
you in episode 4, doujinshi episode.
Yay.